This is the Henry's Child Podcast. Am I crazy? Or am I just raving?
I am super excited for today's podcast because we're getting someone on the Am I Crazy or Am I Just Raving podcast that I've been really wanting to get for a long time. And as you know, it's Jace Edwards. And Jace Edwards was a part of the Henry's Child family back really from its inception. And he's got some really great stories. And this is a very fun and very exciting interview that we got to do with him. And so Andrew actually is the one that took the reins in interviewing Jace. And we did this when we played our last show, which was in Run-A-Mucca, Nevada. Now, before we get into the interview itself, I did want to do just a few logistical things. First off, I wanted to thank everybody that came out to this festival in Run-A-Mucca. It was absolutely fantastic. We did 3 shows in 4 days. It was a complete whirlwind, and it was just an amazing, beautiful time with a bunch of new fans who, because of Jace Edwards, knew our music already. I mean, I am not kidding. There is nothing like going and playing to what I would consider to be a cold crowd and having them sing along with songs. I mean, these are people we've never met before. So it was a very fun and very cool experience to do that. I also got to give a special shout out to Corey for driving all the way from Eugene on his motorcycle, or I should say riding all the way from Eugene on his motorcycle. He got to see a couple shows and it was awesome to see him. Super surprised for him to show up, but Corey, you're the man, dude. I worship you. I think it's great. We also got some Listen Closely shirts done, and we have a few left over from the show. Those remaining shirts are actually up on Bandcamp, and we have both men's and women's shirts available. And the Listen Closely is just the cover for the yet to be actually officially released CD that we did last year in April. And so if you want to get a Henry's Child shirt, go to henryschild.bandcamp.com and click on the merch button on the very, very top of the page. One other thing of interesting note is that 7 Second Circle is now on Spotify. In fact, the new EP called Longitude is on Spotify. We also have physical CDs that you can purchase. Those also can be found on Bandcamp, which you're able to find by going to 7secondcircle.bandcamp.com and choosing the Longitude EP. The reason that I mention this is, if you don't know, 7 Second Circle is really 3/4 of Henry's Child with a different singer named Brian Forrester, who we've known for ages. But we finally have another physical CD to follow up the Divide record. It's very, very good. We're actually starting to get some good reviews on it, and we're starting to get a few more monthly followers on Spotify. So that would be great if you could go over to 7secondcircle.bandcamp.com and check out the latest EP called Longitude. I also want to give a special shout out to Dwight and Nikki Wallace for actually executive producing that record. And it's only 3 songs, but what an amazing 3 songs they are. I honestly think that the song Summer in Your Eyes is probably the best thing that we've ever written. So I will let you be the judge of that. You can also hit up 7secondcircle.com for our link tree and be able to find all our socials there. So anyway, this is an epic interview and an epic conversation from 2 guys that just adore each other. Before we get into it, I do want to say that I had almost 4 hours worth of material to go over. So I'm actually going to go ahead and break this up into 2 distinct sections. And at the end of this particular one, which is going to be slightly longer than the next one, it's just broken up according to subject. So we have 2 guys who adore each other, who really they do an amazing job going back and forth. Andy talks about his couple drug trips and kind of how he decided he wanted to do music. And so it's very, very insightful. I mean, any fan of Henry's Child is going to love this episode. Now, one slight caveat is we actually recorded this at Jace's studio. So two things really quick. Number one, the actual live feed is in the room behind us. So sometimes when there's like hardly any talking, you'll hear a little bit of a radio and some music going on in the background. That's his live feed that was happening at the time. So that was kind of unavoidable. And then number 2 is normally I record these with 2 separate mics on different tracks. And this was actually just one single track. So sometimes it may sound a little bit like they're kind of talking over each other. And that's just because I couldn't really edit that down quite like I normally do. But you know what? It's a podcast. It's the Am I Crazy or Am I Just Raving podcast. And we are all about quality content. I mean, this is really, really good stuff. So if you're a fan, you're going to love this. Enjoy this conversation with truly the voice of this podcast, Andrew and Jace Edwards.
Well, coincidentally, I'm sitting here with the man who just read that intro that's been going for, we got 70 podcast episodes now. Finally got in the same room with the guy. It's only taken us 25 years, Jace?
It's been quite the clip, hasn't it?
Indeed. Jace Edwards sitting with us today. An outstanding, fantastic friend who is just as passionate about music as we are. And I'm super excited to do this because I saw him for the first time in 25 years yesterday.
Yes. and I got to see something that I hadn't seen in 25 years, which was some of the greatest performers take the stage and really just leave it all up there. You guys played amazing last night.
Thank you, man. It was
Thank you.
It was a privilege. It not only was it great to do this show, but after what's happened in the last year and every show being canceled, to finally get up there and just really let it go. I mean, I was riding that endorphin high until I passed out at 1 o'clock after being over at your place for 2.5 hours. But it was fantastic. Loved it. And I'm looking forward to tomorrow. So
yes.
But this is an interview with you, my friend. Let's. I'm going to start with some commonalities you and I have.
Okay.
We've had a fun conversation here the last couple of days, and we have a couple of things in common that I had no idea about.
Yeah, one of them I really didn't even have a clue about, that we had the same kind of background in training.
Indeed, a little bit. But I want to start with military aspect.
Right.
I think it's unusual for people in our positions, musicians for the most part. There are some, without question. But you were a Marine, a jarhead.
Oh, yeah, Semper Fi.
But you started before that, though. ROTC in high school?
Yep, did ROTC in high school. When I first got into it, I was I just moved to Oregon, Roseburg, from Seattle. And I was kind of like an outsider because,
you went into shock.
Yeah. Well, I think I put a lot of people into shock.
I believe that.
First of all, they didn't wonder. They wondered why, a little blonde-haired, blue-eyed white kid was talking the way he did. And I got called all kinds of names for that. And, I was like, okay. And that just, made me want to, fight everybody. And then I had a wrestling coach who said, well, first of all, I had a math teacher who became a wrestling coach because I was trying to fight everybody. And he said, 1, you're too small to fight everybody. And 2, if you're going to fight everybody, you better know how to do it. So why don't you come join the wrestling team? And while I was there, he recommended that my next year, that I check into this ROTC class they had at the high school was available. And I did. And it was like one of those things. It was at the beginning, it was like, okay, whatever, ROTC. It's kind of like you get to wear a uniform. I mean, I know for you were at the college level. So
right.
you were different. For you, it was vested interest. It was
a means to an end.
It was
truly.
You were getting an education in exchange for the service. For me, I was in high school, trying to dodge like real classes, and I kind of fell in love with military history.
Sure.
And at the same time, I'm you said I was a Marine. Well, my adopted father, because I'm half adopted, he was a Marine, and he was a 12th generation Marine,
wow.
which would make me the 13th generation.
The lucky generation.
Yes, very much so. Yeah, so his father, great-grandfather, all the way back to, Tun Tavern. So I always wanted to be in the military, and I was like, well, I wanted to go to military school. I wanted to go to boarding school, get away from family, not be living with a stepdad.
Instead, you ended up in Roseburg.
And instead, I ended up in Roseburg in ROTC. But when I realized that ROTC was actually something that could give back and be beneficial, that's when I started trying at it. And so I kind of rose up the ranks rather quick. My junior year, I became a captain. So I had my own class, my own platoon. And then my senior year, because I graduated early, I was 17, I became a cadet colonel or a cadet lieutenant colonel. And I was in charge of the whole brigade at school. So I had, the whole school was under my command. And every year we joined up with 6 other schools in Fort Lewis, Washington for a little bit of training up there.
Exercises.
Right. And there we formed a brigade, and they formed a hierarchy staff there. Well, my senior year, when I was 17, I went from lieutenant colonel to full colonel, cadet colonel. And for 2 weeks, I was in charge of thousands of kids.
Sounds like it was fun.
It was an intense learning experience.
I'm sure.
But the one thing I learned out of it was sacrifice.
Interesting.
Because when you have people under your command, you're responsible for them. And there was a couple of times where something happened logistically, and say there was a meal short and we're on an exercise. Okay, well, the way I look at it is that means I don't eat. Everybody else eats. If there's one meal short, I'm going to take the short meal.
Servant leadership.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, and that was what I learned a lot there, and that was kind of like something that I tried to take with me, you know, into the future. But a lot of the lessons we learn, we often forget, and it takes certain things in life to remind us.
Indeed. Memory flashbacks, we call those.
Yes. Yes.
So then, did you enlist?
Yeah. I went in, I graduated at 17. I graduated on Sunday. I was in boot on Monday. Got out of boot camp that summer, and then it was right during Kuwait. Oh. So I went in thinking that I was going to go overseas to Kuwait and, you know, fight there. Well, it wasn't a fight. They were what? Surrendering to journalists.
I was about to say, I don't think that was a fight.
Yeah, that wasn't a fight. That was a surrender fest. But
Indeed.
That was the thing. They brought all of us in, and then nothing happened. And so all of us get out of boot, and we're all ready to go to our next phase of training, and now we're being told that all our lives are going to change.
And then they taught you how to blow things up?
Yeah, well, that became my caveat out of that was that okay, so you're not going to go become infantry. Instead, we're going to send you to combat engineer school, and you're going to learn demolitions and basic construction. I'm like, okay. And so I did that, and then when I decided that I wanted to, I was given the opportunity to go to college. So my whole active duty time, about a year, if that, and most of it was training.
Got it.
You know?
Yeah.
And so they came to me and said, okay, well, here's the deal. We got too many people in the Marine Corps. And you did all this in ROTC ahead of time. I like when I graduated boot, I graduated as an E3. So I'm getting paid 2 great pay grades higher than everybody else anyway. You know, I hit corporal by the time I was 19. By the time I was 21, I was an E5. I was a sergeant. And that was when I finished up. And by that whole time, when I left the Marine Corps, it's because I got into radio.
Okay.
But
so what introduced you to radio in the Marine Corps?
The LA freeways. No.
That was great.
I went to I was going to college when they sent me back to school. I had won a not electronics. Yes, electronics scholarship at Umpqua Community College in Roseburg.
Nice.
And so I went there, did a term, lost my scholarship because I didn't take any electronics. I took theater arts and journalism. And so they said, yeah, no electronics, no scholarship. And by this time, they'd put me in the reserves in the Marine Corps. Okay. And I was stationed in Salem. And so, which that's a combat engineer unit out there. They're a heavy equipment and a demolitions unit and a bridging unit, I think. But while I was there, they said, okay, well, if you want to go to school somewhere else, you know, feel free, just tell us and we'll transfer you to a new unit. Awesome. So I get accepted at El Camino College down there in Southern California. I go down and join a Pasadena unit, and they say, yeah, we don't have any combat engineers out here, so you're going to be retrained. So I became a 7212 Stinger gunner operator. And so I fired shoulder-fired missiles.
That sounds fun.
But here's the thing. Now, you're a musician, so you would understand this. And this is what's really beautiful about the shoulder-fired missiles. There is a double locking mechanism in the nose cone of this thing. I'm probably not even supposed to talk about this. The Stinger missile.
I'm sure it's on YouTube.
Oh boy, I hope so. So, but it locks on in 2 different ways. But it's a gyroscope in the front, and it spins and it whirs. Oh. And when it hits a tone, you get this lock. And there's a certain tone it hits, and you could tell the people that were in training that just couldn't play an instrument or didn't like music because they had the hardest times getting that tone. And it was like, as soon as you heard that tone, it was like, oh man.
Hey, Tommy, Oh, Tommy's in the room, folks.
Yes.
Sorry about that. Tommy, we need to find that tone. It's got to be a sample on one of our songs.
Got to find that tone.
Got to find that tone.
But yeah, so that was how I ended up in radio. Was I was down there in Pasadena, going to school back and forth at El Camino College, and I'm listening to the radio one day in traffic. I'm listening to Stern, and he says he does a live read, which I know what a live read is now. Back then, it was like, oh, he's just talking about this place. And he does this whole shtick on the Academy Radio Broadcasting in Huntington Beach. Well, I'm going to go check that out. So I went down there and I did a voice test, and they called me back and said, hey, man, listen, we normally only take 2 people per, whatever, which I know it's a sales ploy, but made me feel special. And I thought, okay, I'll go check this out. Got my loan. And at the time while I was going to school, being a Marine, I was working at a pool hall, and I was working construction. The pool hall I worked at, I worked 2 ways. 1, I worked because I was the guy at the front desk issuing out the balls. 2, I worked with 3 other guys, and we were hustling people. And what we did is we would travel up and down Southern California to different pool halls, from San Diego up to Santa Cruz.
I can verify this, audience. I played pool against Jace a couple times. He was really kind to me and let me get close, but I don't think I never quite beat him.
I get lucky. I do. I get lucky.
Sure.
But it was in doing that I ended up screwing up real bad. It was right around the end of my time at the Academy Radio Broadcasting, my last week there. I had to do my final exam, which I did in drag. And then I found out my vocal coach that I was doing the exam for was gay, which that was really interesting after I sat on his lap to finish off the song. So the final exam in vocal coaching is you had to sing the wedding song.
Okay.
Do you know the wedding song? Pardon me, is everybody here? Because everybody's here. I want to thank you all for coming to the wedding.
I do not know the wedding song.
Okay, I can't sing it as well as I used to, but
because you used to practice.
Right, I used to practice, but there's 3 breaths you're allowed to take. It's I think it's a good 40 seconds on one of the stanzas that you just have to rattle through.
That was the final of the class?
That was the final for this vocal coaching class. It was vocal coaching, but it was Hollywood vocal coaching.
That's great.
He was a Hollywood vocal coach.
That's
I mean,
so
I'm serious.
great.
It was so Hollywood vocal. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I got you. That's great.
But yeah, so I did the whole thing wearing a dress, and I sat in his lap and sang the last part of it, and then after the class I found out he was gay. Didn't know that beforehand, but the other part is after the class I went down to my truck, and my truck had been broken into.
Oh.
And my pool sticks were stolen.
Oh.
And this kind of told me, okay, well maybe my time playing pool is done. And then about a week later, I got caught by a bunch of guys and got beaten the hell out of for hustling them in pool. And that said, it's time for me to leave L.A.
You don't mess around with Slim.
No. And so then that's kind of how I fell into radio. Was at that point I said, okay, well, obviously playing pool and hustling people is not the right way to go.
It's got a shelf life.
I really want to try my hands at like comedy, but got to find a platform. And the Academy said, hey, you just graduated. If you want, there's a place up north that is looking to hire a graduate.
Fantastic.
And so I went to KLYC in Yamhill County in McMinnville.
That was your first job?
First real job, yeah.
Excellent. I'm going to change the subject.
Okay.
So now we got to your first job, but I'm curious, and this is another commonality you and I have.
Yeah.
We've discussed this, and I think it's fantastic. And because I want to hear a story about this, and if you want, I'll tell mine because I think it's fun. This is the band that launched 1,000 bands. I read that article in Rolling Stone. The band that launched 1,000 bands. I know so many musicians and people that are deeply, deeply into music whose first band was
Rush.
Indeed.
And Rush is a polarizing band.
It is.
Because Geddy Lee has those vocals that people either are attached to or
they can't do it, or they can't
just get away from.
Yep, and I totally understand that. Like, I had a woman in my life I loved. She appreciated the music. I play her La Via Strangiato. She loved it. Fantastic. She loved heavy music. She loved Tool. She loved Alice in Chains was her favorite band. She could not listen to Rush.
Right.
She even loved the documentary. Couldn't listen to it. So okay. I mean, I get it.
Yeah,
right?
some people, it's just Geddy has that
Indeed.
tone that just doesn't fit with them.
So-
of course, we call them communists. And that's okay.
Well, I thought they were socialists.
Well, socialists, communists, we all need them around.
But they're from Toronto, right?
They help take care of other people.
Indeed, the people that need taken care of.
Right.
So what? Tell me though. So how'd that happen? What was because most people I know that are huge Rush fans, and I've got half a dozen in my life, musicians that they remember the first time they heard them.
Yeah.
How old they were, what the album was, what the song was.
Oh yeah.
I mean, so what was it?
For me it was I was raised kind of like as a small child on Pink Floyd. And then when I went to go visit I met my father for the first time when I was 10 years old. And I found out I had brothers, which was interesting. And one of them was a drummer. And he was, his name's Kenny. He's now a filmmaker, Kenny Winkler. Has a movie out called Kiss the Abyss. He did a while back. Check it out. It's awesome.
Shout out, Kenny.
Yep. But he exposed me to Rush because I believe he was trying to play Tom Sawyer.
Of course he was.
Yes, because every drummer back then was trying to play Tom Sawyer.
Because it's really hard.
but it was that. But I think it was hearing him, just the drumming parts, and hearing Rush just kind of muffled in the headphones as I watched him play or try to play, this part. And I'm trying to hear the song that's, but the first real.
How old were you?
I think I was like 10.
Perfect.
Yeah, I was like 10. Like one of my favorite songs is Xanadu. That was when I found out about your experience with that song. I was like, oh man, I can totally see that.
Indeed. So when I was in college at the time,
yeah,
I on an ROTC scholarship,
right?
4-year Army ROTC scholarship for aeronautical engineering because I was trying to become an astronaut at the time. Then of course, the space shuttle blows up. I was at the fence for that.
That's crazy.
I know, right? It's quite a memory.
That was with Krista McAuliffe?
Indeed, the teacher that went down.
That's right.
So we used to go up. I had a bunch of junky friends. We were, a bunch of space nuts, and we would go up. It was only about a 40-mile drive, and you could park at the fence. And there were people that would bring RVs and vans, and they would sit out in chairs. And you're at the fence, and they didn't care, right? I mean, there were tracks that were worn around the fence. This is pre 9/11, so you were way closer.
Right.
I mean, over half a mile closer.
Wow.
Than you can get now. And, well, they don't launch them anymore, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Anyway, that day, so we used to go up there all the time when they would launch because they would do, 4 a year, even sometimes more. But this one was different. There were 10 times the people. It was a complete clusterfuck. And we still got in there. I mean, if you remember the international press for all of that, it was insane. So all of these press vans were everywhere, and we're just sitting there. We're a bunch of college students that are there with a case of beer. I'm quite serious. And like in a cooler. And we have these Chase Lounge chairs, and we get up on top of my friend's van and lay them out and watch the shuttle go up. I mean, it was awesome, right? And get drunk. I mean, it was great. And then try to drive home slowly. And this time, we're in the same spot, but it was just 10 times more people. And it goes up, and then we see it explode. Now, at the time, for the first 10 seconds, nobody knew if it actually exploded. Because if you remember, one of the rockets...
Right, and it looked like it kind of disassembled. I was watching on TV.
Everybody remembers for about 10 to 15 seconds, you think that booster is the actual shuttle. That was a premature separation, right?
Right.
And everyone's waiting. I mean, the crowd makes kind of this weird screaming breath sound for a second.
Wow.
And then... the announcer says it appears as though the space shuttle has exploded because there was these loudspeakers outside, and there was utter chaos. I can't even tell you. The screaming, the vans, all the press, it was unbelievable. And again, I cannot say this strongly enough. I'm 18 years old with a beer in my hand in a Chase Lounge chair on the top of a van.
It was Florida. It was a different time.
Well, no, it's... I think that's still Florida to this day. It's still Florida. Sorry, Florida. No, not sorry.
Don't be sorry.
Indeed, indeed. Well, after that, my dream exploded because I was wanting to be an astronaut. Man. That's all right. I mean, hey, life changes for a reason.
Yeah,
right. Well, your pool sticks get stolen for a reason.
See, but the thing is, I remember watching that, and as you describe it, I remember when that happened. I was kind of like going, dude. Like space was,
yeah.
Every kid wanted to be an astronaut. Everybody wanted to go up into space.
I still wanted to do it. They just stopped doing it.
Right.
They just stopped setting them up, so it was no longer a possibility. So the military actually let me out of my scholarship.
Really?
Let me walk away. You have a track when you have a scholarship. My track was taken away.
Yep.
Right. So they tried to get
doesn't exist.
they tried to get me go into aeronautical engineering. They tried research and development, and I'm like, oh, so I can build a better bomb? Mm-hmm. Ooh, a more efficient killing device? I'm going to pass on that.
Yeah, I don't see you building things that kill people.
Yeah, that doesn't sound fun. Let other people do that. That's fine. I've got my strengths. That's not one of my strengths. Yeah. Anyway, my heart wouldn't be in it. So, started taking a lot of drugs.
Right.
Which is always an option at that point. Not quite yet. Went to airborne school. That was fun. Oh yeah, airborne school.
Yeah.
So that was fun. I did some military stuff. I thought I threw myself into it for a year, that it might be fun. So I got
what was airborne school like? I mean, because you weren't obligated to service, but you were going through and getting this.
I was an ROTC.
Yeah, but you were around all these people obligated to service.
So the difference was everyone there when you're a cadet. So they made cadets score a 300 on the PT test.
Right.
You remember that, right? I mean, so that was not easy, and they made us all be in really good shape, and there was a reason for that. Because the Sergeant Airbornes knew that someday, a couple of years, we were going to be officers.
Right.
So they just abused the fuck out of us.
Yep.
We were kid idiots.
Kid idiots. Yeah.
Okay? And what's great about summer airborne school is it's multi-branch and multi-service, right? So we had an Air Force captain. I mean, he was a jet fighter pilot going through his airborne, his airborne training.
Getting his wings.
We had two Navy SEALs in there. They didn't talk to anybody. We tried to get them drunk. It didn't work. Anyway, just saying. And we had a bunch of Navy guys, and we had a whole bunch of Marines. And I've always found it fascinating because my biggest memory of that is the Marines were such assholes. I mean, thoroughly. They were never cool. They were always jerks, and they loved abusing the cadets because they knew we were going to be officers too, right?
Exactly.
Oh, you guys think you're so smart. That. Oh my God. So I have to ask you, Jace, you were a Marine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why were you such an asshole back then? Come on.
We were trained that way.
There you go. Right.
It's part of the
you were trained to be an asshole.
Yeah. It was called Asshole 304. I think it's a class, and I think it starts off with reminding everybody else that they're not Marines. I think the way how that works is step one, and then once everybody accepts that they're not Marines, then you remind them again, and
Yeah.
It just progresses from there. Sorry, it's horrible.
It was great. It was great. It's great. It was always, it's so funny because I love you, man. I always have. You know that, right? I mean, we first met, I had no idea. Right. We didn't talk about this stuff.
No.
And then
to
find out you were.
I was talking about my girlfriend all the time.
Which one? I remember several.
Yeah, there was a few.
Indeed.
I just didn't know.
It was a long time ago. Well, I know.
Is that horrible? That's horrible.
I know two of them did because I was in the room, but it's all right.
That was horrible.
Anyway, what happened was ended up taking a lot of acid over the course of a winter break with my best friend in the world. He was back from school himself. Excuse me, not back from school. He was failing out of school. One of the smartest men I've ever known.
Oh man.
Okay, and we are standing on top of the building he lived in, 1 o'clock in the morning. Flying, and he tells me, I'm going to go into the Air Force, get the GI Bill, and I'll become a doctor. He told me that.
Okay.
And I said, yeah, I think I want to be a rock star.
Right.
And that's when that started. So he went and dropped out of school and joined the Air Force, went on the GI Bill, and now he's a doctor.
Now he's a doctor.
I'm dead serious.
That's awesome.
And went back to school because I was obligated with the scholarship at that point. They did not let me out of it. I was, wandering in the I won't say the desert. It was wandering in the swamp in Florida, taking a lot of acid, and had a moment where I was listening to Xanadu during the second verse by myself on 5 hits of acid. I do not recommend that to anyone listening to this. This is a full disclaimer. 5 hits of acid and alone is typically not a good choice.
Yeah, don't do that. Just so you know, word to the wise.
And somehow my brain broke down the second verse of that song and put it back together in my head. And after that trip, I had the unwavering belief that I could write music, even though I could not play guitar and could not sing a note.
But when did you start singing then?
About 2 years later, dropped out of school.
So it took you 2 years to get from that point to get to...
2 years, maybe 3. I then kept taking acid. Took too much acid.
Yeah.
Anyone that's done that understands what that is. So it took me about 6 months to a year to get my brain back together again.
Right.
I'm quite serious when I say that. You know,
Yeah.
anyone that's been in any sort of recovery understands what I mean.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I got it back together, and then picked up a guitar, and started playing, and whipped out. I mean, I'd been writing words for 10 years, so I started using that. But it was Rush. It was that moment, and it's a vivid memory. Have always had unwavering belief. I'm not the greatest musician. A guy like Rich, I mean, he's the monstrous musician. Mm-hmm. Okay, I mean, the creativity that comes out of his fingers, and I don't say it lightly. He's absolutely unbelievable. You know, Tommy's an accomplished musician. I can barely play guitar, and I can sing. At the same time, I just knew in that moment I could write songs. I just knew, and it's hard to explain, and I don't mean it to sound arrogant, because it's not, because it's been proven to be true.
Yeah,
right.
It's true. I mean, I can sit here and go through lyrical breakdowns on some of your pieces. Hell, we could turn this whole podcast into a whole different direction where we start playing, let's talk lyrics. But
let's not do that.
But I do have one question musically that that I've always wanted to ask you.
Oh wow, springing it on me!
Yes.
I tried to give you prep before this. You're springing it on me, you dick. See, he's still an asshole, people.
See?
He's still an asshole.
Semper Fi. So, do you remember the first song that you ever wrote?
I do, because I've had I was lucky to play in a band with Rich, of course, my brother, and a fantastic cello player named Dale Bradley, and I brought the song to them. It had the chords and the words. It was done. I mean, I can play it myself, right? It's 2 chords and some really good words and a fun melody, and I played it for them. They're like, absolutely, let's do it. They loved the song.
Wow.
So I got a chance to record it.
Yeah.
So I have it forever.
Now, who was the song for? What was it about?
Oh, wow. Well, of course, it was about a girl.
Yes. Yes. And how old were you when you wrote it?
The first one let's see, I wrote that poem. Yeah, that is the earliest one. There were pieces in Reasonable Doubt that are lyrics before that, but no, it's, so I was literally sunning myself on our deck, okay, out of the house we were renting. And I won't forget this, of course. I was laying there naked, trying to get a tan on this pale body of mine. I know you can appreciate
Didn't
that.
want to have tan lines.
I know you can appreciate that. And she comes out there and pulls a chair up next to me and breaks up with me. Seriously.
Whoa. Okay,
It
just
was
so
great.
you know,
it was great.
Ladies, never break up with a guy when he's naked, because that just sends them into a whole different mental spin. Wait a minute. Hold on here. What do you mean it's over? I'm ready, and you're saying, wait.
I would actually recommend ladies to do it. Do you know why?
Why?
Great song. A great song came out of it.
Great song came out of it. Right. Ladies, if you want to create great music, you break the hearts of great men.
Exposed in the Sun.
Exposed.
That's the name.
That's the name of the song.
Exposed in the Sun.
Nice.
Naked and stricken, exposed in the sun. Reaching for shade while I'm watching you run.
Oh, nice. Yes.
Anyway, let's get back around. That's a great question, man. So I want to ask you this.
Yes.
What was the greatest interview you ever did? So you've interviewed hundreds of musicians, correct?
Yeah. Oh, God.
And some of the greats, some that I'm sure stick in your brain, and some you have long forgotten, and that's okay too. What is the one that you are most proud of? The feeling you got the person to open up. You really thought it was a great interview. Something you might actually listen to every once in a while.
Well, I listen to a piece of it every once in a while because it was a real honest moment.
Beautiful.
But it was I got this opportunity to go to Philadelphia. I was working in New Orleans at the time, and there was a dozen of us from around the country that did Mandatory Metallica that were chosen. And so I did a Mandatory Metallica feature, which I'd been doing for, at that point, 10, 12 years. I missed my plane.
Of course you did.
Yes. Because, I was the night guy, and so they had me wake up early, and, it's hard to wake up early when you've been up all night drinking. That was New Orleans for you, though. But I missed my plane. I convinced a stewardess who was a Metallica fan to let me on the seat. Like, it was supposed to go to somebody else. And she's like, oh, no, I'm giving it to you. You can get on. You got to go interview Metallica. And so I get there, and by the time I get there and I rush from the airport to the place, I'm 20 minutes late. I missed Sully and Shannon from Godsmack. And I got my other half of my Godsmack interviews. But then it came around to Metallica, and I thought, okay, it's going to be maybe one person who's going to come and talk to each table. No, we got 15 minutes alone with each member of Metallica. And this was right after Newsted quit, and this is when you had...
Some Kind of Monster?
Yeah, Some Kind of Monster going on, and it was the whole Awakening thing. And when I was working in Vegas, I did this mashup of this spoken word piece from Henry Rollins and this Metallica song called Fade to Black. And I used to do this mashup on the air, and I did it on my Mandatory Metallica, and then I do it live in clubs and stuff like that. And but I made a actual produced copy because I used to do it live. Take the two different albums and just blend them together, and stop one while the other one's playing and type thing. I put it together on a disc, and I gave it to each member of Metallica, except for Trujillo, because Trujillo didn't play on that song.
Sure.
But the thing is that when I was talking to Hetfield, and I give him this thing, and he's like, okay, and he's kind of looking at it from time to time, and at first it's like, okay, I think I set him off. This is not good. I've put him in a bad space.
You surprised him.
I fucked up his stuff.
What?
Oh. I didn't. That's what
sure.
I'm thinking while I'm talking to him.
Right.
And then I looked at him and I said, James, can I please ask you a question about Cliff? And he's like, Cliff? Like, this is out of left field. Why are we talking about Cliff? Cliff has nothing to do with... But in my mind, you've gone through all this history because of Cliff's passing.
Sure.
All this other stuff with Newsted, with Trujillo, everything else with, Claypool almost becoming your funky-ass bass player. All that wouldn't have happened, And so we started talking about Cliff, and I started probing him with these questions, about stuff like, do you remember what his favorite food was? Or, is there anything that you've ever smelled that reminds you of him?
You tried to make Cliff present for him.
Right. And he says, you know what? He goes, one thing that whenever, he goes, I don't know, this is weird, man. I'm actually thinking about this. And he starts going off talking about foosball and about him and Cliff playing foosball. And it was one of the last foosball matches they had against each other in Sweden. Cliff was winning, and James didn't want him to win. And so he reached over and he slammed the opposite controller, and it hit Cliff in the nuts. And he said it was the most amazing thing, man. Cliff wasn't Cliff. He came around that table, and that finger came into my face, and he said, don't ever do that. And I believed him. But it was like this real honest moment between this guy, who's sitting here going,
yeah.
And meanwhile, I'm sitting going, I'm talking to the biggest rock star in the world, and here he is talking to me about this nut shot on Cliff Burton.
Playing foosball. Because he was losing, so he cheated.
Now here's the cool thing. So this was on the Madly in Anger tour, and that was Philadelphia. So I was working New Orleans at the time, which was about 6 months down the road. So 6 months down the road, we're now in New Orleans. I've got to go get a guitar signed for the station, and I've got to, and so I get to bring my wife and all the listeners in for the meet and greet opportunity, right? And my wife is wearing this purple sweater, and she has met everybody.
By the way, Jace has a beautiful wife.
Oh, she's awesome.
I just want to make that clear.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
She's awesome, but she's met everybody and doesn't care. And half the time she will tell them, I really don't know who you are and really don't care, but whatever, right?
That's why she's still with you.
Right. So Metallica, James Hetfield comes out, and she becomes this deer in headlights. She becomes this like, and James comes up and he sees me, and I'm thinking, okay, how am I going to make that connection from what we talked about before? How am I going to, and he comes to me and he sees me and he goes, you, Philadelphia, how you doing? I go, I'm doing great. How are you? And I got this guitar for you to sign. And, oh, by the way, this is my wife, Kelly. And he looks over and he goes, oh, hi, Kelly. Oh, I love your sweater. And Kelly looks up at him with these big, big bright eyes and goes, purple is my favorite color.
Oh, my God.
That's the only thing she could say. And Hetfield he looks at me and he goes, awesome. I like it too. And he signs a guitar and stuff. And what got me though, and this is why that other interview turns into my greatest interview, was he said to me as he was leaving, he said, "Your mix, good stuff." And I was like,
you listened to it.
Dude, that's awesome. You actually heard it. You actually remembered me. You actually, and it was like, you come across a lot of these guys. Like, I've interviewed some people 4 or 5 times, and they don't remember you.
Well, the thing is, I would say this then, Jace.
Yes.
Perhaps it's because you asked Mr. Hetfield the right questions. You got him present, right? You got him in the moment thinking about his friend. And so that's something that I'm sure most interviewers don't ever do. Which was a beautiful thing, right? Maybe these other people that keep forgetting you didn't find that question. I don't mean that in a negative way.
No.
I don't mean that in a negative way. It's just, you click with someone.
But also Hetfield, and this was my observation of him then, and I kind of made it to him then. But he's a full circle rock star. I mean, this guy has gone from being abused, obscure, in pain, to non-helped, non-resourced, to resourced, biggest name in music, to complete breakdown, mental, physical, banned, exposed, to healthy and mental and present in the now again. I mean,
it's a rare arc.
He's a full circle rock star.
And it's a rare arc. I totally get it.
And that was the other thing too, is that he opened up a lot about the whole thing with Mustaine. About when they fired him and everything. Because, I mean, if you don't know the story, basically Mustaine was so drunk all the time that they walked into his hotel room over on the East Coast, and they said, "You're out of the band." And he says, "Okay, when's my flight leave?" And they handed him a bus ticket. And that was so that he could think about it all the way back to San Francisco. And so he actually regretted that, So, but yeah, so best interview ever would be Hetfield.
All right. Well, I got to ask you again the other side of that coin.
Oh God,
the worst ever. Now, I know you've got one. I'm sure you got one. Somebody walked out on you.
Oh yeah,
but it's also got to be one where you just blew the interview.
Well, the one that walked out on me, I didn't know I blew the interview.
Oh,
but that's when I learned an important lesson about interviewing, which is, of course, at least a little bit of prep work.
At least a little bit. That's what I did, Tom. At least a little bit.
And interviewing is an interesting art because interviewing is it's all about connection. So you find a connection, you make a connection, you try to get that connection to expose other connections, and find a way to do follow-up questions on those. So I thought that I had a connection with this one artist because I drank at a place that he used to play at. That's not a connection, folks. That's called drinking at a place that a guy used to play at. It doesn't mean he has good memories of that place either. But so I get to fill in for the Dr. Ken Martin on KZL, which was a legendary station for its time back in Eugene back in the day. I mean, from the 70s, 80s, 90s, KZL was it for Oregon.
Dominant station.
Yeah. And Ken Martin had been the driving force of this station. Mm-hmm. He was the program director. He'd been doing afternoons and everything. And the fact when corporate radio came in and fired him indiscriminately was horrible. You are a horrible company, Cumulus, or Citadel, whichever one it was. They bought each other or merged, whatever. So anyways, I get to interview Curtis Salgado.
Indeed, legendary performer. Curtis
Salgado, staple in Oregon, especially when it came to blues. And if you're a fan of the Blues Brothers, of course, the old
movie
story going about is that Max's Bar down there in Eugene was where Curtis and was it Robert Cray? No.
Not back then.
Not back then. It was Curtis Salgado and somebody else. But Curtis Salgado played and somebody else played guitar. And they were doing like a duet blues thing there, and it was Belushi who would be there drinking, and he was
drinking at Max's because he was filming Animal House.
Right.
That's right, in 76.
Yep. And at the same time, he was also waking up at random people's couches, wasn't he?
Indeed, he quite famously did.
Yes.
Walked into the wrong house.
Yeah. I don't think he knew.
Passed out.
I don't think he had a right house.
Is there a right house?
I don't think there ever is. But so, anyways, the whole thing is that Blues Brothers, amazingly successful shtick, people don't realize that originated from Curtis Salgado.
Yep, that was his shtick to begin with.
That was
he
it.
wore the black suit, the long tie, the sunglasses, the hat.
He was the
Yep.
Blues Brothers.
Yep.
You know, and so I opened up this question about that, and he didn't say hi, bye, go to hell, nothing. He just stood up, turned around, walked out.
Do you know why?
Because he's a little miffed off about that whole situation.
Do you know why?
Well,
They stole his act.
Exactly.
He never got a single dollar. They wouldn't even acknowledge it.
Right.
Dan Aykroyd finally did in the mid '80s.
yeah. But
It
that was
long
after Belushi was
long
gone.
after Belushi was gone.
Yep.
Aykroyd admitted it and gave at least a little ego smoothing to Mr. Salgado, but he still couldn't get over it because it was his thing.
It was.
They made millions and millions and millions of dollars on that. It was the #1 album,
Yep.
the #1 movie based on what he created.
Exactly. And he got nothing for it.
Didn't even get an acknowledgement in the credits of the movie or the album.
Not even a byline.
I mean, I understand why he got up and walked out. I really do.
See, I was thinking that, man, maybe you want to tell your side of the story. But, you know, KZL was my first job into rock radio.
Oh.
And
What year was that?
that was 92, 93. So,
right before we met.
yeah, right before we met.
I mean,
So-
literally months.
uh-huh.
Okay.
So I was working at this little place up in McMinnville called KLYC, Radio for Yamhill County. They had me. It was KLYC Radio for Yamhill County. Yeah,
Good Lord.
that's how they made me say it. They made me pinch my throat and do it that way. It was an AM station. They said it comes out better. Whatever, dude.
Good thing you graduated with the wedding song.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
I know,
I'm
right?
sure that helped.
Yeah. No, that way. If it wasn't for Julie Andrews, man. So, so I was there and I was hating my job. I was doing sales during the day. I was on the air for like a few hours, and then I was voice tracked, where I would record like vocal sessions for nighttime broadcasts. And then I had to go work in Izzy's Pizza 4 days a week as a waiter. 3 days a week, I was going to Portland, and I was trying my hand at comedy, trying to be a stand-up comedian. And then...
That's a tough gig.
yeah, and all of this I was making with all the jobs put together. I think I was clearing around $900 a month.
And then you found KZL.
Yeah. And then I found KZL, but the way I found KZL was I went down there because, well, I wanted to work there. I knew I wanted to work there. I wanted to work rock radio, and it was the rock radio station. I wanted to live in Eugene, so I had to go back to Eugene. A buddy of mine that I was in the Marine Corps with in Salem from years past had moved to Eugene. And
Was he an asshole too?
yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah, we were.
Okay.
So,
How'd you get to Z-Rock?
KZL, I drove into town hearing them saying, okay, dude, this is the station I'm going to work at. Mm-hmm. I found out the program director, Ken Martin, got off the air at 2 o'clock. And so, I drive in Monday, 2 o'clock. And actually, I'd come over the weekend to see my friend Troy. And I had been there on Monday morning. I thought, okay, I'm here. I'm going to go there and apply. I applied, gave my tape and resume. He says, great, thanks. We have nothing. See you later. Okay, well, the next Monday, I happened to be in Eugene again. I said, well, fuck this. I'm going to go do it again. So I brought my resume and tape to him. Nope, sorry. Okay, well, you know what? Now it's a challenge. 8 weeks.
Wow.
Every single week, same resume, different tape. He never listened to one of my tapes. 8 weeks, every Monday. I was there standing. When he got off the air and walked by that front desk, I had a tape and resume in my hand. And finally, one day, he came out with a paper up, and it was covering his face. And he just walked by and said, follow me, Jace.
And that, folks, is how you get a job.
And that's how I got my job at KZL. Now,
Love it.
Z-Rock across town.
Mm-hmm. 'Cause it was soon thereafter. You weren't at KZL very long.
Well, I was at KZL for up until they bought Z-Rock.
And then they transferred you.
Right. And so there's a cardinal rule in radio. You're not allowed to work at competing stations. So I worked at KZL under one name. KZL, I was J.D. Cross. Over at KZZK, my name was Bobo Spiewak.
Good Lord.
So I'm Bobo Spiewak on KZZK. I'm J.D. Cross on KZL. KZL calls me in, and I'm thinking I'm in trouble that they found out. And they said, no, we're turning KZZK into KNRQ, and we want you to do nights. And I'm like, great. So I went back to my name, Jace.
There you go.
And that's when Jace Edwards actually came to Eugene, was when I was on KNRQ.
Interesting.
When we actually, there was 4 of us that started that station.
Okay.
So
then let's keep going.
Yeah.
Let's see. I want to find out how you got to deciding you need to live in the middle of nowhere in Run-A-Mucca and run your own station. So
okay. So let's see here. We'll do the hyper one.
All right. Let's see how quick this goes.
I was at KNRQ for a number of years, rather successfully, and then I got
Indeed.
plucked.
You were popular.
Yeah, my show was. I loved working Eugene radio, and I got to tell you, man, Eugene during the '90s was a decadent place. And just so you know, the station wasn't paying me dick. So in order for me to be able to make means end, I had to take side jobs as a strip club DJ because I could go work at Jiggles, Great Alaskan Bush Company, Silver Dollar, Club 1444, which are all the places I worked.
I remember.
And of course, what was the underage one? Lollipops. Oh man,
How did that happen?
There. That was fun.
How did that happen?
Oh man. So I walked into Great Alaskan Bush Company the day that I got hired at KCAL. Or KZEL.
Well,
I keep getting the names.
Of course
KZEL.
you would celebrate by going to a strip club.
Who
would not do that?
Well, I walked in there and I walked in and said, hey, I'm going to be on the radio here. I'm going to be moving down here. Do you guys need a weekend jock?
There you go.
And they said, yeah. And so I just took a shift, and the next thing you know, I'm working at all of them. But it was decadent. And by the way,
I met some of those ladies in
Yeah.
your apartment.
those were a lot of the that's a lot of the stuff that we were talking about at the practice sessions. Was me
Indeed.
being stupid with a lot of that stuff.
Weren't we all?
We all, yeah, it was.
I don't ever look back and think that was smart. That's never a
Yeah.
word I used to describe that memory when I go back there. Yeah.
No.
Intelligent, smart, wise. None of those words ever seem to apply.
No, but exciting, fun, irresponsible, mischievous.
Indeed, I like
They-
all
they
those
come
words.
in.
I enjoy all those words.
Play.
Indeed. Well, man, you're.
But yeah,
When did you see us first? I meant. Now I'm springing this one on you.
Yeah.
What was the first show? I'm pretty sure you were sponsoring it with the first time because
it
you.
was KZZK.
Yep.
And Logan was our program director.
Logan Hawks.
Logan Hawks.
Shout out Logan Hawks.
So Logan Hawks was an overnight guy at KZEL.
Yep.
And when I started off, they gave me a Sunday night shift where they said 4 hours of pressing buttons and then 2 hours of actually being on the air. And then Logan was my relief.
Oh.
And so my very first shift, well, I'll tell it the way Logan would tell it.
Oh, good Lord. Now we got it. We got to link Logan on this one. You're gonna do some Logan?
Yeah, I'll
Can
tell.
you do it?
I'll tell this way. Well, I can't do his voice. I can't,
Okay. I thought you were going to go for it.
I wish I could do a good Logan Hawks, but I can't, man.
He's got that slide.
He does, man. But no, he had this whole mission, which was to put me off my guard because I was the new guy on the station,
Oh, of
and
course.
so
hazing, they call that.
him and Michael Anthony, the whole plan was that he was going to take Jack Daniels and sprinkle it on him, have Michael Anthony carrying him in and putting him in the chair and set the mic up for him and basically say, okay, you set his next record up and I set his next record up and and here's Logan all acting all drunk, just hanging there, and then all of a sudden out of nowhere he springs to life and does this amazing break and then goes dormant again. And and I was supposed to react, I think, a lot differently than I did.
How'd you react?
I didn't. I just walked away. You're on duty now, dude. I'm done.
There's nothing quite like a prank gone awry.
But yeah, no. Logan and I ended up becoming roommates. And what sucked was, first, we worked together at KZEL. They fired him from KZEL. He gets hired on as program director at KZZK. He says, "Hey, Jace, you want to work at competing stations? Sure, I'll break the cardinal rule." So I did that.
Was that Bobo?
That was when Bobo Spiewak, which he named me on that one. He also made me dance around in a taco costume one summer where...
I hope there's video.
And I would dance in the street with shorts and combat boots, so all you saw were my legs and then my tattooed arms coming out of the thing and combat boots, dancing in the street as a taco. But anyways, during that time...
It was a different time.
He said, I'm going to reward you. How? You get to host this show. What show? This show that we're putting on. We're going to have you go up there and do the stage announcements. Really? Now, this time I'd been really green. I hadn't been in radio long, and I hadn't done much stage stuff. Most of the stage stuff I'd done had been on my own doing comedy. So I get up there, and I get to announce you guys. And it was for that, it was a showcase show or something like that at the Red Lion.
Oh, right. Oh, that was where we met you, the Red Lion.
Right? See, look at that.
Oh.
Look at the sparks going off there.
Oh, man.
It was that show.
That was a weird show.
Right?
It was good, though.
But
a lot of
you
people,
guys
but it was
played
weird.
well.
Yeah, it was good. It was weird.
You guys played extremely well. I mean, and it was like, okay, so when I first got into radio, I got into radio because, I thought I knew more about music than other people. Because
You probably did.
Well, because growing up, I would search out music because Roseburg didn't have radio stations. I mean, they had country. That's not music, I mean, let's face it. It's pretend. But when it came to what I was into, I mean, like from Rush, I had made a severe jump to early Metallica. From there, Overkill, Testament, Megadeth, Pantera. By the time I was graduating high school, I had this real eclectic taste that you didn't hear on anything. You barely heard it on Headbangers Ball. So I thought I was going to be a rock star. In junior high, I played guitar. I've played for years, but in junior high, I thought I was gonna. I learned some finger tapping techniques, and for about a minute and a half, I'm a god. After that, I'm spent. But for that minute and a half, I can make you believe that I know what I'm doing.
There's a joke in there somewhere about your wife.
Yeah, there is.
I'm trying to
Something like
land. Where's that
that's
joke?
What she said.
Not quite. She loves you too. She loves you too much to say that. But
Right. Oh no, she's
good.
honest. Love has nothing to do with that.
That's
It's
a good
honesty.
thing. That's a good thing.
So, but yeah, I always thought Kelly and I thought we were going to be these mega rock stars, and so I started getting into Yngwie Malmsteen, and really getting into this like just insane stuff, and nobody else was into that, and yeah, I don't know, I kind of got derailed from where we were talking, but.
Let's go. It was the origins of you getting back into how you got into music.
Yeah,
Okay.
and so when I saw you guys there at the Red Lion,
Yeah.
right? When I first got into radio, I thought I was going to expose people to all these great bands and stuff that I discovered on my own and stuff that I'd found, Suicidal Tendencies and all this great stuff, right?
Jane's Addiction.
And and so when I actually got working in radio, you realize that that's not what radio is. And radio is a dichotomy. It's okay. So it's a struggle. It's a struggle between commercialism and giving the public what they actually want versus what they need. So you can talk to any radio program director, and they will give you, of course, one basic answer, that the hits work. You play the hits, people will listen. You'll get the mass audience if you play the hits. One thing that I've always done as a program director, which it took me many years working in radio, working up through the ranks to become a program director and actually get to run my own radio stations and all that, and find out the other side of the coin, not just the ego side that I was living on before. But so, I found that if you expose people to undiscovered music and new music in different genres in an intelligent way, not just throw it at a wall and say, oh, look, here's a whole bunch of eclectic stuff. Boom, listen to that. No, give it reason. Play the hits, but then say, hey, by the way, you know what? I dug this one up. I want to share this one with you. And don't hit them with too much of it. Let it come in a little bit at a time, because let's face it, how many of us have gone to a concert and it doesn't matter how good the band is, but if you don't know 3 songs in a row, you're mentally gonna wander.
It's difficult. You're absolutely right.
You're mentally gonna wander. If you don't recognize one of those 3 songs, you're mentally gonna wander. Now, that reminds me of a programming aspect of a 3-song snapshot, where any radio station, you should be able to define that radio station and its genre by a 3-song snapshot.
Right.
If you can't, that station is a little bit
Eclectic.
right, and that's not
Not
always
usually
a good thing, and it's not always a bad thing. It all depends on market, but that's a whole different side of things. But anyways, so I'd gone through this whole thing where I want to introduce people to music. I got disgruntled because that's not what the job was when I thought it was in the beginning. And then I found, wait a minute, it can be, but you have to do it right. You have to find ways to do what I learned back actually at that station at KNRQ, backdoor management. So, for example, back then, I met you guys at Red Lion.
Indeed.
And I thought to myself, this is a band that I want to expose. And that's where I'm trying to get to, is that watching you guys rekindled my need of, this is my medium, this is what I want to do, right?
Very cool.
Now, Back then, though, I was only on a classic rock station, and I was doing promotional stuff for the other station. I wasn't really on air at KZZK. That was a satellite fed out of Texas. I was just a promotional guy and a local voice. And so when KZL bought KZZK, they turned it to KNRQ, and it was about that time that it was, I think I was helping out Mike. He was managing at the time, and I was trying to help out do booking. And I was trying to call places. Do you remember that, Tom? And I was trying to call places and get you guys booked at places and stuff like that, and which I had to walk away from because KZL bought KZZK and said, hey, we're going to turn this into KNRQ. We want you to be our night guy. Now, in radio, and the thing is, and I probably shouldn't follow rules, but I do. In radio, there's certain things that you're not supposed to do. One of them is conflict of interest. You know, you can't be managing a band and be an on-air guy.
Indeed.
You can't do that because you can use one platform to help out the other.
God forbid.
Right.
No one does that.
Right. Which is why I quit helping you guys and went on the air and started playing the material.
Which was a great help.
Which
was a great help.
Which that was, yeah. Yeah. I made a better choice there.
Well, we'll never know.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. What if I would have got you booked on that world tour?
And flown the world with us as our manager.
Oh, we would have been huge in Europe.
Or at least Belgium. Netherlands?
Netherlands?
Yeah, indeed.
So when it became KNRQ, fortunately, Logan was the boss. Unfortunately, soon after, they fired Logan.
I remember that.
And they brought in, this is what's funny. So, two stations one station, you have a program director. He becomes an operations manager over the two stations. Filling his place is this person. And then which I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus or names or anything like that. But when they fired Logan, they hired her husband to run the other station. I don't think he was hired there because of his knowledge of alternative music and his groundbreaking, because he came from an easy listening station. So it's hard to come, and knowing this now, it's hard to come from, something that is non-active, like easy listening, and change your entire programming structure to an active programming structure for rock. But anyways, Logan, unfortunately got fired. And I was able to talk this guy into giving me a show on Sunday nights called The Q After Dark. Mm-hmm. And I used that show to propel all the local music in Eugene that I could.
You were fantastic.
As well as break out some of the, the national stuff that people were still talking about. What was funny is I left Eugene and I went to Vegas. And the reason I got picked up there was the owner of that radio station in Vegas was at a fishing trip in Eugene and was listening at night. And he heard me do this segment, and he called me up, and he said, "Hey, I own these radio stations in Vegas. I want you to come work for me." I'm like, "Really?"
All right. So now let's do some radio station hopping. Can you how quickly can you go through all the stations you own?
Okay,
so we're now in Vegas.
We go to Vegas. So
just do one.
I go to Vegas. From Vegas, I was at 103.5 The Edge. That flips to Kiss FM, R&B, and Classic Soul. They fire everybody but me and have me be this guy on this Classic Soul station, which I'm like, dude, I'm tattooed, I'm white, and I'm pierced. I'm not what you would call a classic soul jock, but sure. I stayed there.
I'll talk a little quieter, get a little closer to the microphone.
I did some horrible stuff on that station too. But anyways,
and then,
I said screw this, and I finally got him to fire me so I could collect unemployment. And I went on a couch surfing tour. Ended up in Southern California, on a couch in San Bernardino. And a buddy of mine said, "Hey, you worked at the station that the guy who's running KCAL used to run." And I'm like, "Okay, well, that's a good enough connection." So I called him up, and he goes, "Oh, I know who you are." "Okay, cool. I'm glad you do." And he says, "Why don't you come in and try a shot?" So, okay. So I went in and I did a shift, and then he let me fill in for a guy. And that guy I filled in for him because he went for a 2-week vacation, and this was a night shift in Southern California with, I don't know, 8 million listeners, whatever, right? Big station, too. You could hear us all the way from L.A. in the Forum, all the way down to out in the desert, all the way almost to San Diego. Huge station. And so I went on there acting like I'd been on this station for 20 years. I wrote a show that was a very in-depth and shocking show. I basically became a shock jock. I was the epitome of a shock jock for many years there. I did things on the air there that you can't do anymore. Like, you can't get away with it, even on, I mean, Stern still tries to, but that's different. That's cable.
Didn't Janet Jackson's tit change all of that?
Yeah, so I'm in Purdue for about 6 years, and I'm building up this name, and I'm getting all this accolades, and then I get picked up in New Orleans. And this program director in New Orleans is like, dude, I heard your show. I want you to come to New Orleans and do this down there. Okay, so I go down there, and I'm doing this. And when I say adult radio, it was extremely adult radio. And I get down there, and then Super Bowl happens. Janet Jackson, she flashes her nipple on the air. The FCC wakes up and says, we got to pay attention.
Justin Timberlake flashed Janet Jackson.
He had a little to do with that. Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying.
Yeah, clothing malfunction.
That's what I heard. Somehow she got punished and he didn't.
Yeah, exactly. How does that happen? Oh, wait. It's America.
Oh, wait.
So.
Justin must be cuter.
Yeah, right. So, when that happened, I had to change the direction of everything I was doing on the air again, which, again, I'd gone through this thing to where it was all about the music, and then when I went to Vegas, it became more about personality. When I went to Purdue, it became a lot about personality. And then in New Orleans, I got to switch back into music again. And and the funny thing is that every one of these stations I've gone to, I would bring Henry's Child with me. And I would play like, in Purdue, I'd play Headlights a lot. I played Honestly.
Oh, wow.
It was for the different markets.
Oh, sure.
So, Headlights worked well in Purdue. Honestly, worked amazing in New Orleans.
What's interesting is you're having a too eclectic rock station is not really a good idea, right?
Right.
And that was our problem as a band, is that on the same album you could play Honestly and you could play Headlights. I'm like, what genre does this band fit into exactly? Well, apparently more than one.
Well, but the other thing, though, is that those songs, especially off of Mumbles and Screams, I love the subsequent stuff. And actually, what was it? Drink Me.
The original tape.
Yeah.
Had all the energy of those kids.
That was
no idea what they were
amazing.
doing.
but Mumbles and Screams is still something that I find different ways to incorporate into things that I do. So
thank you, man.
When I was in New Orleans, I was working with this filmmaker, and he's like, "Oh man, we should do this this film about your radio career." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, sure, right. No, how about I got this idea about this guy being stalked, and he's a radio guy, and he eventually gets taken, and all this blah 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 blah, and he goes through this he has this really intense this trip, and I'm telling him this whole thing, but meanwhile, all I was doing was telling him my concept idea for what would be a movie for your album, because every single scene is like, okay, and by the way, I got this band that would be perfect for a song for this scene here. And, oh, by the way, so they did this cover of, when the snake sings in, Jungle Book, and he's like, oh, trust in me. Yeah. So I want to do this whole scene in this movie where I'm going on this trip, and it's this song that's leading us. And, had we made this movie,
would have been fun.
It would have been a licensing nightmare, because I would have been coming to you guys going, "Hey, guys."
I think our answer would have been
we need some signatures, and we need to come out with some breakdowns.
I think we might have said yes.
So
then
so
New Orleans goes to,
well, New Orleans gets cut because of Katrina.
Right.
And what sucked was I'd been working all this time to try to get myself syndicated.
Oh.
And so right before Katrina hit, he was the vice president of Christian Broadcasting.
Oh, goodness.
And he's about to syndicate a shock jock. And he's syndicating a shock jock because why? Because we make money. So, anyways, he had me all set to go on 5 stations. And Katrina hit.
Okay.
And unfortunately, when Hurricane Katrina hit, I was working in New Orleans. I was on the air that Friday when the hurricane turned. My boss and everybody was drunk at this at a club opening, and so I called my boss up, and I love this guy. His name's Sig, and if anybody was ever one of my biggest influences in radio itself, it would be Sig. But Sig said to me, he goes, dude, you're a broadcaster. You know what to do. You call it. So I turned the station into emergency mode at 7 o'clock at night on Friday night, and we started doing evacuation reports and stuff like that. The rest of the city came on board with theirs at about 9 o'clock, but I was the only live thing because, again, radio being what it has become at that point, I was the only live person on the air in a city the size of New Orleans from 7 to midnight. Every other station in town had something either piped in from another market or was recorded earlier. So nobody in town was talking about this hurricane. Nobody had information going out about it. Our listeners, we went into this emergency broadcast series for like the next 30 hours, and I worked about 20 of them in helping people get out of town, right? Well, then they say, okay, you're not staying. You're getting out of town too, because it was supposed to be a team of us that were going to stay. Nope, you guys go. Good. Well, I got my wife and we had just been married about a year at that point. And so I got my wife and my cats and my 4-foot iguana in my Jeep, and we went to Texas. Well, then they didn't let us back in the city for 30 days. And then I get told that I have an act of God clause in my contract. And so the station's going to be off the air. Our tower actually got picked up and thrown in the Gulf of Mexico. Our tower was in Port Sulphur where the hurricane made landfall. And by the way, that station I was at, we were huge in Cuba. But no.
Is that better than Belgium?
Yeah, right? But they fired us, or they fired me. And I went on what I called Hurrication, and I kind of left radio. I went to Canada for a few to do some snowboarding up there at Whistler to try to get my head straight, and that didn't work. And so then I decided I'm going to leave radio, and I went back to construction. And so I went to L.A., and I'm on a job site, and I'm under a house, and here I am now. Now I'm flipping 30, and I'm like, I haven't done this since I was 19, and
hurts.
And it's real work.
And it hurts.
And it does, but I'm doing this, and I'm listening to Mark and Brian, the morning LA guys, or back then they were. And I'm listening to this. I'm like, God, I can beat these guys. I can beat these guys. And on my third day on that job, I get a call from this guy that I worked with a long, long time ago who says, hey, man, we're replacing Mark and Brian in Palm Springs, and we want to replace them with you. And it was completely out of the blue, out of nowhere.
Wow.
And that's how I ended up in Palm Springs, which is where I ran into you again.
We tried to figure this out. Was it 05 or 06?
It had to be 06.
06. It sounds right. It's right in that window.
Yeah.
So at this time, I'm a financial advisor. Still am.
Oh, man.
I don't know if you know that. Still
I
am.
know. It's
So
just so weird.
I know. You're not the only one that thinks that.
Oh, man.
I've been doing this for about 5 years, and I was at a convention for my company, and it was a training and kind of reward training convention, right? And I get there late. I get to the hotel. Got to be in a ballroom at 8 o'clock in the morning, with my bells on and ready to roll for a giant seminar. And there's a little tab that tells you all the different stations, and like one of the stations was the rock station. I'm like, fine, I'll wake up to that. So I set the alarm. This is pre-cell phone alarm, and I set it. Make sure the alarm works. Turn it off. I wake up. I did not even wake up to a song. I wake up to your voice telling a story.
Oh, gosh, probably, yeah.
At 6 o'clock in the morning, probably?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I was an early riser back then. Might have been 5:30 even.
Yeah, back then I was on from 5 to 10.
It was amazing. It was one of those, so surreal coming out of a dream, haven't heard your voice in 8 years.
Right.
8 years.
Yeah.
98. Seriously.
Yeah.
Hadn't seen you since then. But it was so, I'm like, wait, what's going on in my dream? Jace Edwards is talking to me in my dream? What is happening right now?
Right.
And I wake up like, oh, no, he's on. Wait, what's happening now? He's on the radio. That was so great. I've never forgotten that. It was so unique and such a strange, random.
Very random, yeah. You
I've
called me.
I did call you.
I answered the phone, and he's like, hello, Jace Edwards. And I'm like, why do I know this voice? And what in the hell is this?
I looked up the goddamn number and called you, man. And you're like, what? That was great.
Yeah, that was awesome. And then, of course, you know what I did after that? So I get off the air that day, and my producer, Tank, then got back-to-back listenings to...
Mums and screams and clearly confused.
Yeah.
That's great.
It was like after that, we had to go to our show meeting and plan out for the next show. And I said, okay, well, here's our inspiration for today.
I love it. That was such a wonderful... unbelievably small world random memory that I hear you in Palm Springs. Good Lord.
So there you have it. Part 1 of the interview between Andrew Smith and Jace Edwards. As you can tell, it ran the gamut of a bunch of things, well over an hour. And, we've got to a lot of stuff. We're able to talk about a lot of very, very fun stuff. And we're soon to hear in part 2 about the politics of radio stations and even the challenges of even owning a radio station. And Jace really, truly has created something big in his life. And I really got to hand it to him for not only doing what he wants to do, but doing it with people in his tribe that enjoy and embrace him. And really, he's created a very solid ecosystem that I'm super blessed to be a part of. So just as a quick reminder, as we sort of wrap this up, if you're not on the Henry's Child newsletter list, please consider signing up. It's free. You get an alternative version of Human Being sent immediately to your inbox, and you get, more importantly, on the list to be notified of when new things happen. So please go to henryschild.com, and in the very middle of the landing page, leave your first name and email address, and I will get you on our list. Also, if you like this podcast, please go to your respective places where you get podcasts. Those could be the Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify, and hit the subscribe button. That helps us out tremendously if you subscribe to the podcast. And I want to thank you for hanging in there this far with me and being a part of the Henry's Child family. We love you. Stay safe. Keep washing your hands. Keep wearing a mask. And we are going to get through all of this, my friend. Be on the lookout for part 2 coming in 2 weeks. Talk to you then.
It came out my mouth.